Imagine waking up to the sound of a megaphone blasting outside your home. You step outside, squinting against the bright camera lights as a cheering crowd surrounds you. A TV host, smiling ear to ear, announces that your house, your worn down, imperfect home, is about to be demolished and rebuilt into a luxurious dream house. At that moment, it felt like a miracle for families struggling with illness, financial hardship, or personal loss. Extreme Makeover, Home Edition seemed like a lifeline. They were promised not just a new home, but a new start in life. Tears of joy filled the air as bulldozers moved in, and within a week, a stunning mansion stood in place of their old house. But behind the cameras, the reality was much harsher. What was meant to be a blessing soon turned into a nightmare, as families faced crushing financial burdens, emotional stress, and even the loss of their homes. At first glance, Extreme Makeover. Home Edition appeared to be one of the most heartwarming shows on television. The premise was simple but powerful. Families facing extreme hardships, whether from illness, tragedy, or financial ruin, would have their entire homes demolished and rebuilt in just 7 days. It was a race against time, with a massive crew of builders, designers, and volunteers working around the clock to make it happen. The emotional storytelling was the key to its success. Producers carefully selected families with the most heart-wrenching stories, ensuring audiences would be hooked from the first tear-filled interview. They weren't just remodeling homes, they were changing lives, or so it seemed. The houses weren't just functional, they were extravagant. Giant aquariums, personal bowling alleys, and themed rooms tailored to each child's interests made these homes feel like something out of a fairy tale. Celebrities often joined the effort, adding even more star power to the mix. The message was clear. These families were being given a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for a better future. But the reality of maintaining these oversized dream homes would soon prove devastating. At first, it seemed like the ultimate blessing. Families who once struggled were now living in massive, custom-built homes that looked like something out of a magazine. But what Extreme Makeover, Home Edition didn't prepare these families for were the hidden financial burdens that came with their so-called free homes. One of the biggest issues was property taxes. Before the remodel, many of these families lived in small, modest houses with low property values. But after receiving a multi-million-dollar makeover, the value of their homes skyrocketed, leading to massive tax hikes. Many families, already struggling financially, found themselves unable to afford the sudden increase in yearly taxes. Then came the utility bills. These homes weren't just bigger. They were packed with high-end, energy-draining features like heated pools, home theaters, and oversized kitchens. Electricity and water bills doubled or even tripled, putting even more financial strain on families who had been barely making ends meet before. Some families, desperate to stay afloat, took out loans using their new homes as collateral, believing they could handle the payments. But as costs continued to rise, many fell into debt. One heartbreaking example is the Harper family from Georgia. After receiving their dream home on the show, their property taxes and utility bills became unmanageable. Within just a few months, the house they had been gifted was gone, foreclosed, and taken by the bank. They went from struggling to survive in a small home to being completely homeless. For many families, the reality was clear. Their dream home was never meant to be theirs forever. It was a TV show spectacle, and once the cameras stopped rolling, they were left to deal with the harsh financial consequences. While Extreme Makeover, Home Edition painted itself as a heartwarming show, behind the scenes, things weren't so perfect. Families were often pressured to appear happy and grateful, even when they were overwhelmed, exhausted, or deeply stressed. Producers encouraged emotional reactions, prompting families to cry on camera and act ecstatic about their new homes, even if the changes weren't what they truly needed. Meanwhile, the network was making millions, while communities volunteered their labor for free. Local builders, electricians, and landscapers worked around the clock, unpaid, to complete the projects in just 7 days. They believed they were helping struggling families, but in reality, the show was raking in huge profits from ad revenue and sponsorships, all while disguising itself as an act of charity. The designers focused on over-the-top, flashy features rather than practical improvements. Many homes ended up with unnecessary and impractical additions, such as indoor bowling alleys, massive aquariums, and even theme park-style playgrounds. While they looked impressive on TV, they didn't fit the everyday needs of the families. In fact, some features became completely useless. One tragic example involved a disabled child who received a custom-built indoor jungle gym. While it was an exciting reveal for TV, there was just one problem. The child's mobility issues meant they couldn't even use it. Instead of focusing on accessible and functional renovations, the designers had gone for a visually dramatic feature that was completely impractical for the family's real needs. In the end, many families felt like props for a reality show, used to create emotional moments while the network cashed in. The goal wasn't to truly help them, it was to make good TV. For many families, life after Extreme Makeover, Home Edition was anything but a fairy tale. The sudden fame that came with being on a hit reality show was overwhelming. Once the cameras left, families found themselves constantly recognized by strangers, with their personal struggles now public knowledge. Some families even felt trapped in their own homes. What was once a private space suddenly became a local landmark. Neighbors, reporters, and curious visitors would stop by unannounced, expecting to see the grand home they had watched on TV. Instead of finding peace, families felt like they were living in a museum, always under scrutiny. Financial stress only made things worse. Maintaining a mansion on a modest income became impossible for many. Larger homes meant higher costs for utilities, maintenance, and repairs. The pressure to keep up with the expectations of their new lifestyle strained family relationships, leading to conflict and emotional distress. One heartbreaking example is the Higgins family, who struggled to keep up with their new expenses. Eventually, they were forced to sell their dream home and move into a trailer, losing everything they had once celebrated on national television. The emotional toll was devastating. What was meant to be a fresh start became a painful reminder of what they had lost. In the end, for many families, their once promising new home became a burden too heavy to bear. The show also left behind a trail of resentment and controversy in the communities it touched. While some neighbors were supportive, others grew frustrated with the special treatment certain families received. They saw hardworking people struggling every day, yet only a select few were given free homes, often based on how dramatic their story was on TV. Some families even faced accusations of faking their hardship to get on the show. When their new homes became too expensive to maintain, they had no choice but to sell. But rather than sympathy, some communities turned against them, accusing them of scamming the system for personal gain. Even the promises made by the show didn't always come true. Families were often assured of college scholarships, financial assistance, or long-term support, but in some cases, these never materialized. One notable case involved a family who, after realizing they couldn't afford their new home, sold it for a profit. The backlash was immediate. Many accused them of exploiting the show for money, even though the reality was that they simply couldn't afford to stay. Instead of building stronger communities, the show often left behind divided neighborhoods and broken trust. What started as an act of generosity ended up ruining lives. Extreme Makeover. Home Edition gave struggling families hope, only to leave them with debt, stress, and shattered dreams. The illusion of a free home was just that, an illusion. Reality TV thrives on emotional moments, but what happens when the cameras stop rolling? The network made millions, while families were left to deal with the real cost of their so-called gift. Perhaps the biggest question is, was it truly a gift or just another TV stunt?